All right, let me ask. Everybody knows that has heard either your version or they've heard the media's version of what happened at your house, right? There was a protest that came through your gate of a private area, come by your house. I can't imagine all the emotions and all the adrenaline and things that go into that situation. But one thing I've wanted to ask you since this happened, and especially when I got to meet you and got to hear you talk, and I heard that some folks want to paint you as this reactionary, racist person, over the top. I heard you give answers to questions. They were very thoughtful and very nuanced. And the question that's been on my mind is, so these folks come through by your house, and I don't care who you are. I don't care how much you think your understanding of why they're protesting. That would make anybody's adrenaline go. I don't think it's an honest thing to say that wouldn't create some uneasiness at your house if you're there with your wife. But looking back, the rest of the street wasn't really bothered. Maybe that was due to you. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know the geography of your street. Looking back, is there something you do differently about that day?
The only thing that I wished I'd done differently that day was I wished I had enough forethought to be standing at the gate instead of on my side porch to keep them from coming in the neighborhood at all.
Now, as I've heard you tell this story, there's a part that I had not heard, and it could be because I don't read enough, but there was not just that night. Because it's kind of like, how do you go from that day in that situation to running for U.S. Senate? And I've heard you explain that it wasn't just what happened at your house that day. The follow-up and the fallout from that changed you.
Well, and yes, and the second assault on our house didn't fit the narrative, so the media didn't cover it. But the Tuesday after the first assault was June the 28th of last year. The next Tuesday, we got a call from an African-American client of ours who was a good friend of ours. We represented her and her mom and her sisters and really considered these people part of our family. But she called up on Tuesday and spent an hour and a half on the phone with my wife saying that what we did was inexcusable and they're going to come back and kill us and burn down the house and there's nothing we could do about it. And this wasn't just an idle one-time offhand comment. She spent an hour and a half going over this and over this and over this. And so we started getting worried. Needless to say, we couldn't find any secondary employment local cops that wanted it because they were afraid of the bad press. We got referred to this entity down in Farmington that does worldwide high-tech security. They'd gotten bad press over the Ferguson riots, and they didn't want to do it. So I said to the guy, what the heck am I supposed to do? He says, I would just take whatever you can't live without, put it in your vehicles, and abandon the house. And I told him, there's no effing way in heck we're going to do that. Yeah. We'll go down to the ship if we have to, but we're not going to abandon our house. Well, I'd gotten a call earlier in the week from the White House, and the gentleman said the president wanted to express his support, and if there's ever anything we can do for you, let us know. So I called that guy back up and I said, now that's a pretty stinking good time.
Hope you meant it, yeah.
So, and he gave me Mark Meadows' cell phone number. And so I got a hold of Mark Meadows and I told him the longer version of this story and he got to work on it. Second call I made was to Tucker Carlson. And I'm sitting on the bench in the kitchen. My wife Patty's sitting beside me sobbing because we think we're going to die. And Tucker put us on the air and said that the local police have been ordered to stand down. The state's not going to provide any aid. The McCloskeys are hanging out here on their own. They've been threatened with death and arson, and put out a call to arms. But we still thought that it was going to be the end. I mean, our daughter, who's 31 now, was 30 at the time, was staying with us. She'd come down for Sunday night dinner from Chicago, but now has stayed through the week with us. That Thursday night, she went down to the basement, found her favorite stuffed animal from when she was a little girl, came up, gave us each a hug and a kiss and said goodbye, expecting to never see us alive again. That's how real the situation
I remember
was.
this, and it's one of those things, at the time so many things were happening, and it was around a holiday. A couple members in the union of the St. Louis City Cops called and told me this story. And they had said that there was some issues with internal politics and things, but that people from around the country were coming, like veterans and other cops from other areas were actually coming to set up, and they called it a perimeter. And maybe that's I'm not versed in. I'm usually on the other side of police, not understand their terminologies. But they said they came out and kind of defended your house.
Well, by the time the mob hit the now heavily reinforced gate at about 7 o'clock on that Friday night, we had 6 ex-Navy SEALs. We had 10 secondary employment cops. We had the FBI light aircraft circling the top of the house. We had, what we used to call in the Reagan administration, peace through superior firepower. And it held the mob off. And once again, not a shot was fired. Nobody got hurt. And I can tell you this, that before the mob hit the house, I assembled our private security forces up on the second floor of the house, and I said to them, what happens here tonight may determine the fate of the country. That if the media wakes up tomorrow morning with a whole bunch of dead bodies lying around the house, the world will change. That cannot happen. We have to do this in a way where it's peaceful, where we have a show of force, but nobody gets hurt, no shots get fired, and we do this the right way. That's exactly what happened.
The thing that's been interesting to me is I've heard folks, I got good friends in Saline County and down in Pineville. You're a very thoughtful person. And hearing this story, what would you say to an African American who would be concerned to vote for you for Senate, would be concerned that you might not represent him because the way this story's either been told by the media or just his take on the way things happened? What would you say to that guy?
I've spent 37 years now defending the rights of others. Right now I represent a young man who is a victim of excessive force from the police. In fact, one of his brothers was a murder victim of one of the murderers that Kim Gardner's office let out of jail last week. I've represented everybody, regardless of their skin color or their national origin or their religion or any other factor, if their rights have been violated. And all human beings are capable of error. There's only been one perfect human being, and everybody else is capable of making mistakes. And if you make a mistake, if you're negligent, or in the case of a police officer, if you use excessive force and violate somebody's rights, I'm there to defend them, no matter what their skin color is, no matter what their religion is, or whatever their background is. And I will do that as a United States Senator. I will represent the people of this state. I will represent their opportunity through self-reliance and hard work to make something of themselves, and to not ask for favors, but to ask for an opportunity to succeed, regardless of their background.